My phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. It was my husband. I smiled until I opened the message. I'm in Cancun with your sister. We fell in love. We're never coming back. Attached was a beach selfie of them laughing together. I cried for exactly 12 minutes. Then I opened my banking app. Our savings were gone. Every joint account had been emptied. My parents begged me to let it go. They said, if they're happy, you should move on. I stayed silent because by sunrise, I had already found one document that would drag every one of them into a courtroom only weeks later. If someone had asked me 6 months ago who I trusted most in the world, I would have answered without hesitation. My husband, Daniel. Right after him, my younger sister, Emily. One was the man I'd spent 12 years building a life with. The other was the little girl I'd practically helped raise after our parents worked double shifts. I never imagined they'd become the reason I'd stopped believing that love and loyalty meant the same thing. Emily had always been the family's free spirit. She changed jobs every few months, bounced between apartments, and somehow managed to turn every mistake into someone else's responsibility. My parents always rescued her. She's still figuring life out, Mom loved to say. At 32, Daniel was different, or so I believed. He was dependable, organized, and thoughtful. The kind of husband who remembered anniversaries without reminders and brought me coffee every Saturday morning exactly the way I liked it. People used to joke that we were the stable couple everyone else wanted to become. I believed that, too. Until the Thursday, he kissed me goodbye at the airport. I'll be back Sunday night, he said, pulling his suitcase behind him. 3 boring days of conferences. I smiled. I'll survive. He laughed, kissed my forehead one last time, and disappeared through security. I watched until I couldn't see him anymore. Then I drove home, already planning his favorite dinner for Sunday evening. My phone buzzed 23 minutes later. I assumed he'd forgotten something. Instead, I opened a message that made the world around me disappear. We're in Cancun together. Stop calling. We're never coming back. Underneath the text was a selfie. Daniel stood shirtless on a beach. Emily was wrapped around him, both of them grinning beneath bright blue skies. For several seconds, I couldn't even breathe. I convinced myself it had to be fake. A joke. A hacked phone. Anything except the truth. I called Daniel. Straight to voicemail. I called Emily. Blocked. Again. Blocked. Again. Blocked. Then another notification appeared. Your joint checking account balance has been updated. I opened the banking app. Nearly everything was gone. Savings we'd built over 12 years. Gone. The emergency fund. Gone. Vacation savings. Gone. Large transfers had been processed less than an hour earlier. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped my phone. I called my parents. Mom answered cheerfully. When I told her what happened, silence filled the line. Then she sighed. I was hoping they'd tell you themselves. Those words hit harder than the photo. You knew. They're in love, she whispered. You can't control who people love. I stared at the wall. What about me? We're asking you not to make this uglier than it already is. Dad took the phone. You'll heal. Let them start over. Start over. Using my marriage. My money. My life. I hung up without another word. I cried exactly once. 12 quiet minutes sitting on my kitchen floor. When the tears stopped. So did the version of me that trusted people without proof. Instead of throwing things or begging them to come back, I opened my laptop. Every bank statement. Every shared account. Every credit card. Every mortgage document. If Daniel thought disappearing to Cancun erased what he'd done, he had underestimated the one thing I'd always been better at than anyone in my family. Paying attention. And less than an hour later, one unfamiliar transfer buried deep inside our financial records made me realize something terrifying. The money they stole was only the beginning. The transfer that caught my attention wasn't the largest. It was the smallest. Just $287. Most people would have ignored it. I couldn't. It had been sent to a company I'd never heard of 6 months earlier. When I searched the name online, almost nothing came up. No storefront. No website. Just a registered LLC with a mailing address in Florida. That was enough for me to keep digging. I downloaded every bank statement from the previous 18 months, every credit card charge, every investment record, every loan document. For 2 straight days, my dining room became an investigation room. Colored sticky notes covered the table. Yellow for bank transfers, blue for credit cards, red for anything that looked unusual. Patterns began appearing. Large withdrawals were never made all at once. They were broken into dozens of smaller transactions, always just below the amount that would have triggered an automatic fraud notification. Daniel hadn't acted on impulse. He'd planned every step. Then I found something even worse. One digital authorization carried my electronic signature, except I had never signed it. The timestamp showed I was attending a company conference in another state that same afternoon. Someone had submitted it remotely. Another document appeared, then another. Each one moved money into accounts I'd never approved. I forwarded everything to an attorney recommended by a coworker. After reviewing the documents for less than 20 minutes, she leaned back in her chair. "This wasn't a misunderstanding," she said quietly. "This looks organized." She immediately referred me to a forensic accountant. Within 48 hours, he uncovered a financial trail I never would have found on my own. Money left our joint account, passed through 2 separate business entities, then quietly reappeared in accounts connected to Daniel. The Cancun vacation hadn't been booked after they left. Flights, hotel reservations, luxury excursions, even airport transportation. Everything had been paid for months earlier. While Daniel was still kissing me goodbye every morning, then came the emails. Thousands of them. Most were ordinary, until one folder caught my attention. Its name was simple: travel plans. Inside were conversations between Daniel and Emily stretching back almost a year. They weren't romantic at first. They were strategic. Emily suggested moving smaller amounts of money over several months because, as she wrote, nobody notices slow leaks. Another message read, "Once we're in Cancun, she won't be able to stop anything." A later email included scanned copies of financial paperwork. Another discussed changing mailing addresses after arriving in Mexico. My attorney looked up from the screen. "They expected you to panic. So what do we do?" She smiled for the first time. "We stay calm." That became our strategy. No angry messages. No public accusations. No emotional social media posts. Just evidence. Every document was organized by date. Every transaction placed into a timeline. Every communication preserved exactly as it appeared. While we quietly prepared legal filings, Daniel and Emily flooded social media. Beach sunsets, oceanfront dinners, videos laughing beside hotel pools. The captions were almost designed to hurt me. "Living our best life. No regrets." Friends began sending screenshots, asking if the rumors were true. I answered every message the same way. "I'm letting my attorney handle everything." A week later, another text arrived from Daniel. "You should move on." Emily added a laughing emoji beneath it. I didn't reply. Silence was becoming my strongest weapon. 3 days after that, my attorney filed the final package. Asset protection requests, financial recovery claims, emergency court motions. Everything supported by documents they never imagined I'd find. Then we waited. Not for revenge. For procedure. Because unlike emotions, paperwork never gets tired. 2 weeks later, Daniel and Emily finally landed back in the United States, expecting applause for choosing love. Instead, before they even reached the airport exit, 2 process servers were already walking toward them with sealed envelopes that would change everything. Daniel always believed confidence could replace preparation. It worked for him, until the courtroom. The hearing was scheduled 3 weeks after they returned from Cancun. I arrived 20 minutes early with my attorney carrying 3 neatly organized binders. Daniel walked in wearing an expensive navy suit I'd helped pay for. Emily followed behind him, smiling as though this was just another inconvenience they'd eventually laugh about. Neither of them looked worried. That confidence lasted less than 10 minutes. The judge began with routine questions before turning to the financial evidence. My attorney presented every document in chronological order. Joint account statements, wire transfers, digital authorizations, travel reservations, email records, property documents. Nothing dramatic, just facts. Daniel insisted every transfer had been approved. Then my attorney introduced the electronic authorization carrying my forged signature. A digital records specialist confirmed the submission had originated from a device that wasn't mine while I was hundreds of miles away attending a work conference. Daniel's expression changed. For the first time, he stopped smiling. Emily tried another approach. She claimed she had never discussed finances and believed Daniel had already separated from me. Then my attorney displayed printed emails. There was Emily's own message. Move smaller amounts. She'll never notice until we're gone. The courtroom became completely silent. Emily stared at the paper as though she'd never seen it before. The judge quietly asked, "Is this your email address?" She hesitated, then answered, "Yes." Every answer after that seemed to create another problem. Dates didn't match. Their stories contradicted each other. Phone records conflicted with sworn statements. Every attempt to explain one document only highlighted three others. They hadn't prepared for evidence. They'd only prepared excuses. By the afternoon, the judge concluded that significant marital funds had been transferred without my knowledge or authorization. Appropriate recovery orders were entered under applicable law, and the remaining financial issues were directed into the divorce proceedings. The vacation they'd celebrated online had suddenly become the most expensive trip of their lives. Outside the courtroom, reporters weren't waiting. There was no cheering crowd. Real life rarely looks like a movie. There were only lawyers packing briefcases, families walking quietly toward elevators, and two people realizing their carefully planned escape had ended exactly where they never expected. With accountability, the divorce was finalized a few months later. The financial evidence spoke louder than anyone's promises ever could. I kept the house until I decided to sell it on my own terms. I rebuilt my savings one paycheck at a time. More importantly, I rebuilt my peace. My parents eventually apologized, not because someone convinced them, because the documents left no room for denial. I accepted their apology. Forgiveness, however, wasn't the same as pretending nothing had happened. As for Daniel and Emily, the relationship they claimed was worth destroying an entire family didn't survive a year. Once trust disappears, it rarely returns simply because the scenery changes. Sometimes I think back to that text. We're never coming back. The funny thing is, they did come back. Not because they wanted to, because legal notices don't disappear when you cross a border. Evidence doesn't expire because someone books an international flight. And the truth has a strange habit of arriving exactly where it's needed, right on time. If I learned anything from losing a husband and a sister on the same day, it's this. The people who run from honesty often believe distance protects them. But distance never defeats documentation. Because in the end, the loudest voice in any courtroom isn't anger. It's proof.